I'd like to call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Directors Williams, Wolf, Hartman, Adam, Levanino, Richardson, Lizaldi, Mosby, Clark,
Here.
Schneider, Patino, Sierra, Gubbins, and Chair Bennett.
Here. Would you all please rise and join me in the flag salute? Ready, begin. Are there any additions, corrections to the minutes? If not, we have a motion for approval. Motion's been made. Second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. A correction, roll call. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
I caught on quick.
Directors Wolf, okay. Director Wolf, Hartman, Adam, Levanino, Richardson, Lizaldi, Mosby, Clark,
Aye.
Schneider,
Aye.
Patino, Sierra, and Chair Bennett.
Aye.
Motion passes 12-0.
Thank you very much. I have one speaker slip from Santa Barbara for public comment. Mr. Becker.
Thank you. Tom Becker, representing Cars Are Basic. Last month, Cars Are Basic made a request during agenda item 8. We requested, and we submitted copies for all of you of our request, to receive the itinerary and all documentation for your meetings that you're going to have with the federal government concerning your federal legislative agenda. We received an email reply back from Greg Hart stating that the meeting dates have been set for, I do believe, March 29th and 30th in Washington, D.C. But you have no idea who you're going to be meeting with. You have no idea what subject matters you're going to be talking about. And you have absolutely nothing prepared going into those meetings. According to Greg, that it's your what you call it, the guy that you hire to lobby for you, your lobbyist group, is setting up the meeting, who they're going to be meeting with, things like that. But you've already established the meeting dates. It seems to me that most businesses, if they establish a meeting date that they're going to be flying across the country, that they would know who they're going to be meeting with and what the subject of the meeting was going to be. Now, we are still requesting the itinerary. We're still requesting all documentation that you're going to be submitting. We want to know what you're going to be discussing and who you're going to be talking to. We still have that request in. At some point, you're going to have to know who you're going to be meeting with, and you're going to have to know the subject matter. Whether you have already established that or you're going to establish it when you land at the airport in Washington, at some point you're going to have to know, and at that point, that's when we want that information made available to us. There's a reason why we're requesting this. We have a new president, Donald Trump, and President Trump has promised that for infrastructure programs, one, the infrastructure programs that he's going to approve have to create jobs, not just temporary jobs during the construction, but they have to then create long-term permanent jobs because of that construction. And also, predominantly, he's interested in infrastructure repair, repairing the roads and bridges. So we want to make sure that who you're meeting with is on the same page as President Trump. We want to make sure that you're on the same page as President Trump. You should be going in there to support President Trump's agenda, not your own, unless your own agenda dovetails into President Trump's. So our request is still in there, and we like to get that information. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Becker. Any other speaker slips?
No more further comment.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to the approval of the consent calendar, and I've been asked to pull item 5G. And the way I'd like to do this is to approve the other items or pull any other item that anyone here on the board would like to do that, and we'll take 5G separately.
Chairman?
Yes.
I'd like to pull 5B.
5B.
Yes.
Any other? Okay. We can go ahead, yeah, make a motion for approval for 5A, 5C, 5D, 5E, and F.
Okay, very good. I'll make a motion to that effect.
Second? Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, signify by say, correction, roll call.
Director Williams? Wolf?
Aye.
Hartman? Adam? Sabanino? Richardson? Lizaldi? Mosby? Clark?
Yes.
Schneider? Patino? Sierra? And Chair Bennett.
Aye.
Motion passes 12-0.
Mr. Lizardi.
Yes. Good morning, Chairman. Director. I just had a question. I noticed on the second page, Table 2A, North County, South County annual allocations. I was just, and I read through the criteria, but wondered why Guadalupe was not signified as a DAC, in other words?
A disadvantaged community?
Yes.
That's been a statewide issue, and it's very complicated, and I think it would be best for us to come back at a future meeting to help define that, but it's been an issue that my staff has brought up to the state in any of these funding programs, that most of our communities are not defined as disadvantaged communities, even though we know that they are. And so that has been an issue that we will continue to fight for and get that definition either revised or allow for more communities that are of those has those disadvantages to be included in those. So at this point in time, the action today is we're basically following the rules and regs that are put before us under this funding program, but to give you more information about how they define disadvantaged communities in the various programs, I'd have to come back at a future meeting.
Okay, and for myself and staff is what I'm looking for, do we need to initiate anything ourselves?
We may, yes. So we may need to have an effort to revise those definitions and to advocate on our own behalf to do so. So yes, and it's a great comment, and I will follow up on that and come back with some future recommendations.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Would you like to make a motion for approval of B? Is there a second? Thank you. Roll call, please.
Director Wolf?
Aye.
Hartman? Adam? Sabanino? Richardson? Lizaldi? Mosby? Clark?
Aye.
Schneider? Patino? Sierra? And Chair Bennett.
Aye.
Motion passes 12-0.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, for your next items, item 5G, and then action item 7, you have outside counsel for that item, and I'm recusing, so I'm going to step out of the room, and then I'll come back after that item.
Okay. 5G, Olive Mill Road and San Ysidro Road intersection improvements. Authorize the chair of the board to sign a memorandum of understanding to reimburse the city of Santa Barbara and the county of Santa Barbara for the environmental and preliminary engineering phase on the Olive Mill Road intersection and the San Ysidro Road intersection improvement projects, respectively at an amount not to exceed $850,000.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Chair, I think this was just because to allow the county council to leave the room, so I'll move item 5G.
Is there a second? Motion's been made and seconded. Roll call, please.
Director Wolf?
Aye.
Hartman? Adam? Bevanino? Richardson? Lizaldi? Mosby? Clark?
Yes.
Schneider? Patino? Sierra? And Chair Bennett.
Aye.
Motion passes 12-0.
Thank you very much. Now I'd like to move on to item 6, which is a new item. And I would ask our new executive director if she'd like to have some input on this.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is an additional item for each of the board members to take the opportunity to share with each other any events that are going on in your communities or any issues or ideas or that you would like to share with the group. Just to keep it a little succinct, we put a little title on it, 1-minute report, just to give you an idea, but nobody's going to time you or anything. It's just an opportunity to share with each other. So if you're interested, I'm requested the chair to go to each one of you, and you can pass if you don't have anything at this point in time. But I would like to keep this on the agendas in the future, so you'll know that you'll have this opportunity to share about events in your communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, let's start with Mr. Clark in Santa Barbara.
Pass.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Clark. Mr. Mosby.
Very quickly, the roundabout at Cliff Drive in Las Positas, although the landscaping and everything's not quite done, but it's functional, and I'm already getting multiple compliments of it, and so I want to thank. There was about $750,000 in state money that went to it. The council put in the additional funds from its general fund to make it a roundabout, but we know it was the right thing to do, and so if you're in that area, go check it out.
I'll just give a very short synopsis of, I went to D.C., and it was part of the county's legislative platform, but it focused mostly on infrastructure. We had 14 meetings in 2 days, so there was a lot of talking going on. But the takeaway was, although President Trump has talked about an infrastructure plan, there really isn't anything out there concrete yet. And they're talking that it probably will not come before Congress until next year. They're looking at, they're looking at healthcare reform, which is going very well so far, as you can tell. And then they're going to plow through tax reform, and then infrastructure is next. So, unfortunately, it doesn't look like this year is going to happen. But we were encouraged to get our projects to 35%.
You know, I'm an unabashed supporter for Solvang and its industry, which is tourism. I want to remind everybody that this weekend in particular is the Taste of Solvang, starting Friday night, tomorrow night with dessert and wine, and then Saturday and Sunday is a tour of the city where you sample each of the various restaurants that are open. And we have several new restaurants that have opened this year, and I encourage you each to try it. And Sunday is the wine and beer walk, and also the following Wednesday is a wine and beer walk. So we're encouraging everybody to come to Solvang and enjoy the weekend and stay the night.
And they have excellent electric car infrastructure in Solvang, so. Just trying to help you out there.
Our downtown Friday nights will start March 31st, and that's in the parking lot across from Macy's, and there will be real good music. There are food trucks and different activities for families. And last year we used to have maybe 1,000, 2,000 people show up in an evening, so it's a nice attraction, and it's a real family-oriented attraction. I just want to remind everyone that June 1st through 3rd is the rodeo here in Santa Maria, and the 1st, which is Thursday night, will be the Challenge of Champions, Mr. Adam. And we are going to have, which means you have the top contestants in all the events coming to Santa Maria, and it's going to be on CBS, and I think it's going to be on C-SPAN. So it's really going to be a big event this year in Santa Maria. There are 9 cities in the country that do the Challenge of Champions. So looking forward to that and looking forward to you guys coming up. Thank you. Oh, and the water was running down the Santa Maria River. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Williams, you kind of slipped in here, so we can go back to you.
I have no report of this magnitude, so.
Thank you. Mr. Adams.
I just want to report that Caltrans is busy on Highway 246 going through Buellton. Greatly appreciated. Thank you very much.
May I add something to that? Is the chili taste-off in Buellton?
Thank you. Our chili cook-off this Sunday from 11 to 4:30. Wine and chili. But thank you, Mayor of Solvang.
Well, I went to a movie this weekend. Let me tell you about it.
Okay, so on this item right now.
Hey, I got the floor.
Go ahead, Mr. Lizardi.
Right here, I won't pass. Our housing development is moving forward. We have a waiting list, so any of you that are planning out there to move to Guadalupe, you better hurry, up and get your home. And it's always festive in Guadalupe, and always come by and drive by and stop. And recently, if you did not know, we installed a charging station, a vehicle charging station in Guadalupe. So hopefully some people will come in and charge your car and have lunch.
Super, thank you. My real quick report is we have awarded a contract for our Class 1 bikeway that'll run from Pacific Oaks out to Elwood School. And that's a little over a mile distance for this Class 1 bikeway that we're pretty excited about. It's been in the planning stages for quite some time. So that's pretty exciting. And then we're also just going out now for bid on our repair of streets for overlayments and correcting deficiencies that exist. Unfortunately, we don't have enough money to do all the streets, but we're going to take a big chunk of the problems and get them resolved. So I'm looking forward to that. And by springtime, we'll have a lot of detours. So keep that in mind when you come down to Goleta. Okay. And thank you, everyone, for having input on this. I do have a request for to speak on this, Mr. Becker.
Thank you. Tom Becker, representing Cars Are Basic. Mr. Lavganino, can you stay in the room? Because this directly impacts what you just said a minute ago.
Absolutely.
Thank you. As you recall, last month we requested information about your legislative agenda and if you can get us the itinerary and people that you've talked to. Now, that was on February 19th, whenever that meeting was. We received a communication from Greg Hart, who's a member of your staff, stating that the meetings were to be scheduled March 29th and March 30th, and they had no agenda.
I can help you with that
Now,
real
we
quick. I can help you with that real quick. So that's for SBCAG.
Can I get my time? But can I get my time frozen for just a little?
Well, go
bit?
ahead. Finish.
Thank you.
Finish. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'd like to hear what you have to say. Then I can respond to that. Thank you.
Okay. So.
Thank you.
So that was the SBCAG trip. I was on the Santa Barbara County legislative agenda, which covers a wide topic of areas. Very little of it had to do with transportation and infrastructure, but I can get you that list. That's not a problem.
No, thank you very much for the clarification, because I was confused as to who you were representing. You were representing the county of Santa Barbara.
Correct.
Not SBK. We
Correct.
just wanted to make that very clear. But I want everybody to understand, going back, since you brought up the issue of legislative agendas, I get to talk about it. I wonder, Mr. Adam, you weren't in the room when I brought this up. Now you are. Mr. Adam, we're trying to get the SBK legislative agenda, the itinerary, so we can find out who you're talking to and whether or not you're communicating with people to try to get, among other things, money for infrastructure repair. At this moment, Mr. Adam, since you voted against the legislative agenda last month, if you remember that, agenda item, 8, Cars Are Basic, and a lot of people, want to know what efforts you are making at the federal level to get money for infrastructure repair, among other things. Mr. Adam, you should be keenly interested in what SBCAG is going to be doing when they go back to Washington, D.C. on March 29th and March 30th and have discussions with people in the federal government about getting money to bring back to the county. Mr. Adam, and we respect you on this, but since this is a major issue with you, including, what was it, Measure M, which you spent a lot of time, money, effort, and energy trying to get infrastructure money for repairing our roads and bridges, Mr. Adam, you would think you would be on this like a fly on a rib roast, wanting to know what SBK representatives are going to be discussing in Washington, D.C. on March 29th, March 30th. You would want to get that itinerary. You would want to know who they're talking to, and you would want to know the subject matter of the discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Becker. Okay, let's move on, Madam Clerk.
Item 7, US 101 Corridor Advisory Report on Project Implementation. Receive a presentation from SBCAG's Corridor Advisor on the results from the Highway 101 HOV decision point documents process and approve implementation recommendations.
Thank you. Mr. Luna?
Okay, thank you, Director and committee members or chair members. Today, we're here to get an update from our corridor advisor, Tony Harris, on the 101 improvements. And the last 15 to 16 months, a collaboration between Caltrans, SBCAG, consultants, and our corridor advisor team, led by Mr. Harris, has been working on the directed decision point documents as this board outlined in early 2015 to advance the delivery of the Highway 101 HOV project to a further state of readiness, 35% design plans. That project and process has been completed, and today we're going to hear an update of the various reports and design developments that have occurred over that time, the results, and a list of recommendations for the board's consideration. We also gave the same presentation to our technical advisory committee a couple weeks ago, and we received some valuable input that's been incorporated both in our staff report and the presentation to date, and a list of the comments was included in the staff report for your information. So at this point in time, I just wanted to introduce the item, and then I'll hand it over to Tony, and he'll have a PowerPoint presentation for that. So if we can get the PowerPoint up on the screen.
Good morning, Chairman Bennett and board members. Thank you for the opportunity again to be here in front of you. Director Richardson, I contributed Solvang in March, so just want you to know. All right, so definitely. You have a copy of the presentation in front of you, but I will also tell you that there's more detailed information in a 16-page report that my team put together. Before I get in and get started, I want to pause for a moment to actually thank the Caltrans staff, the consultants, the SBCAG staff, some of them here in the room today, that spent a lot of time working over the last 15 months. We laid out a schedule and approach to complete the decision point document, and we hit that schedule. So I hope that bodes well for trying to move forward and achieving moving forward. So the move forward is this outline for the presentation that we have. I plan to walk you through very briefly an update on the work that was done the last 15 months, and then talk specifically about recommendations that I would present to you, a discussion of funding, next steps, and then review of the actions that the board has been asked to consider today. The goals that we went into this effort was to advance project readiness. There are several reasons for this, is to generate more information, but more importantly, to advance project readiness to enhance the ability to compete for additional funding. The need for more additional coordination with the local agencies as relates to the HOV project, the rehab project, and the quarter-related projects throughout the quarter. and then to develop more detailed information. On this slide, you'll see that the team has successfully combined the design elements of the HOV with the rehab. The design has been advanced to the 35% stage throughout the quarter, although there are still elements of it that needs further dialogue and discussion. Mapping and surveying and technical studies have been completed throughout the quarter. The mapping and surveying was not only on the main line, but we broadened it to pick up the quarter-related projects, so we have the information readily available as well. There are 5 related projects we identified, and I will talk about those a little bit later on. There's been meetings with the different agencies to begin to better understand what would be the coastal permitting process moving forward, because it has a lot to do with the timeline and recommendations. And a piece of information I think a lot of people are interested in is the cost estimate has been updated. So we do have new numbers to show you. And the results of it is, as we had hoped, it has identified that there are some efficiencies by combining the rehab and the HOV project, as we expected there would be in doing so. Before I actually get into it, I wanted to talk about this information right up front. It's kind of important to recognize this right up front. There's several things that have happened over the last 90 days. I'm not taking credit for them because I really didn't have a lot to do with it. I will give the credit to your lobbyists, your credit to your staff and the work they have done. Recently, executive order was put out by the president asking for a list of projects to be considered for expediting environmental process. The governor of California included this project on the list. The other part is the National Association of Governments was collecting a list of projects to be considered for infrastructure funding at the federal level. This was one of 50 projects included on the list by the governor's office. So, that's not to be taken lightly, to be able to say that your project basically has the seal or endorsement of the governor of California. Take it for what it's worth, but you do have that in those written documents in your hand. That's valuable information. Infrastructure funding is a hot topic. What's going to happen with it, we all don't know, but it is a hot topic. We've heard it's a priority of the president and working through it. There's a lot of dialogue and discussion taking place. What would happen there and the timing of it is still to be known. On the state transportation funding level, there is a bill, a proposal, which you got a briefing on it, I think at your last board meeting, from both the Senate and Assembly, and also from the administration. They have set themselves a goal of reaching a deadline by April 6th. There's a lot of activity in Sacramento. Will they meet that goal April 6th? I guess we'll find out, but it's important to understand that in particular. Then again, another element that I see is on your events calendar and is important to pay attention to is the California Transportation Commission is working on a 2017 freight investment program. And this project has been identified as one of the Central Coast region's highest priority for that program as well, in particular. Environmental document status. The environmental document was not part of the decision point document phase, but it is on the critical path in moving forward with the project. Caltrans, as a lot of you are aware, they basically revised the environmental report released in December, had a public hearing in December, and received comments back. They received 22 comment letters, and they're currently right now working on developing what's the next steps and the timing of it. But I wanted to give you that status of it so we can all keep in mind it is critical path and it's something we all need to stay focused on and being able to move forward with the project and the recommendations. Numbers. Okay, everybody was asking me for numbers the day I showed up to work on this. I resisted because the team need to work on developing numbers, and the team has developed numbers. What we have on this slide is these numbers are shown in millions of dollars. They are in today dollars. They have not been escalated to the future in particular. What we thought was important was to show what was in the strategic plan back in 2010, so you can see how it compares. When we started into decision point document phase, the cost of the HOV was $46 million. Coming out of this, the cost of the HOV has gone down by $90 million because of some efficiencies of doing the work, combining construction with the rehab from a traffic control perspective, staging those things, instead of having it double counted in both projects. I would say also we encourage the team to be aggressive in identifying what could be funded by the SHOP program because that's the most readily available source of funding. So as to be not unexpected, the cost of the rehab program went up. Almost a like amount, not planned. It just happened to be that way, as it turned out. So the positive is it proved from an objective that there is some efficiency and gain by combining the rehab with the HOV project, and then having the rehab and the SHOP program help bear some of the costs and help deal with the issue of the unfunded matching amount of money that's needed for the HOV. Construction segments. And working through this, we have identified potentially several different segments that could be worked on. There was a lot of items that went into input and determined this segment. A lot of it was on the complexity of the design, the permitting process, the status of some of the related projects within those segments. We have identified that one segment is starting from the south in the city of Carpinteria, from Ballard up to the city limits is another potential one. The next one we identified is Carpinteria to Padero Lane North. C is what I like to refer to as the Sheffield interchange segment. It's pretty much is Padero Lane North to just north of the Sheffield. And then we have D and E, which is Sheffield all the way up to Sycamore Creek, which basically covers the remainder of the element in the county and all of the part that's within the city. A point of clarification that a question that was raised at the TTAC meeting is, at this point you'll see later in recommendation, specifically the next segment that I'm recommending be ready for construction is 4A in Carpinteria because it's most ready, and I will explain more to you along the way. The other segments, there's recommended work to continue in each and every one of them. That does not mean that you got to do 4A, then B, then C. It really is dependent upon the ability to get them ready, funding ability, and your overall funding strategy or how you leverage it and moving forward. Give you a little more information about each one of these segments. We found this to be helpful information. It gives you, again, the cost in today dollars. You'll see that the cost per mile is interesting information. 4A has the lowest cost per mile. It also has the greatest opportunity to leverage the most SHOP money in the near term and moving forward with the project. And I'm not going to walk through it in all detail, but that was just mostly for information for your purposes, unless you want me to walk through it in detail. Related projects. The scope of work concluded in the quarter advisory contract required not only working on the main line and finding ways to advance, but also to work and support with the local agencies and SBCAG on related projects that were identified within the quarter. What was helpful as we was going through this was to identify the known related projects that we knew and how did they fall within the boundaries of each one of these projects. You see within A, you have the Rincon Multi-Use Trail. I have another slide coming up. We'll tell you a little bit more about the status of them. Then we have Santa Claus Lane, Streetscape and Bikeway. And then up closer as you get onto the northern end, you have Senior Cedar Interchange to Olive Mill, which had the MOU on your agenda today. You approved to continue to move forward. And then Cabria Underpass already has a previously approved MOU that's currently moving forward. The status of each one of these related projects is important to understand and understand how it relates from what we have learned in our preliminary dialogues and discussions with the local agencies about the permitting process. Within the city of Carpinteria, a local coastal plan amendment has already been approved. And that local coastal plan amendment covered the HOV, and in our initial discussion with the city, we did not believe that another amendment is necessary to move forward with the HOV and rehab project in segment 4A. There will need to be a coastal development permit, clearly, that we will have to work through on that part of it. The Rincon Multi-Use Trail project is the related project that's identified there. I think in November, you was informed that the Active Transportation Program funded the construction element of this project. So the project is basically fully funded, except for there's a need for some additional money for environmental design, a little bit less than $1 million in particular. In the county, in segment 4B, Santa Claus Lane and Bikeway, based on some of the preliminary design information, dialogue with some of the county staff, we do believe that a local coastal plan amendment will be needed for that segment. We're starting, the team, we, and not necessarily me, the team has started that dialogue with the county about how to move forward that process with it, and also that would need a coastal development permit. and there is still unfunded that's necessary there. The environmental and design is currently underway with that. Thus far, and I say thus far because we're not done yet, in 4C, none has been identified in that segment. Based upon the analysis and information and looking at potential coastal plan conflicts, we do not believe there is a local coastal plan amendment needed for that one, but we will need a coastal development permit. And then in last segment in the county, again, we do not believe there's a local plan amendment, but a coastal development permit is needed. There's the San Ysidro Road. The MOU was approved today. That can move into the pre-environmental stage. And then in the city, we do not believe a plan amendment is needed, but we will need a coastal development permit. We are fully aware of the Olive Mill intersection and the Cabrillo Road underpass. The cost of those are shown there in total. Another $58 million identified has been needed. I do want to pause and pass along a compliment to Caltrans on the Olive Mill roundabout and the San Ysidro interchange. They were creative in finding a way to be able to move forward and utilize the funds that are readily available to do a preliminary engineer evaluation report instead of a full-blown project study report, so we can advance those projects on a faster timeline than otherwise we wouldn't be able to. We were not able to use the funds that are currently identified to do it otherwise, and I do want to pass my compliments on to Director Govins for his work with his staff in doing that. So. Now, let's talk HOV only and not talk about the rehab for a moment. This slide, we got a lot of input from the Transportation Technical Advisory Committee, a lot of valuable input that was very helpful for us. We have reworked it from that meeting to hopefully make it more clear what our intent was. The intent that I had with this slide was to show you what was the cost of the HOV and the funding assumptions related to it when the strategic plan was last updated, and to show you how that changed when you look at it just solely based upon the HOV, but also HOV plus the quarter-related projects. So if you look at this slide, when the strategic plan was done, the cost was $450 million, and it was, the funding assumption is it will be funded by Measure A. It also will be funded by state transportation improvement funds, both the regional portion and plus the state portion. Thus far, at that time, there was $140 million identified in Measure A, and $20 million in STIP funds have been programmed. That meant that you still had $291 million to be funded. The assumption is that that funding would come from future STIP dollars or other sources, federal or whatever that may be. And then the strategic plan had the RSTP funds as a reserve if the other funds did not show up. Now, coming out of the decision point document phase, the cost of the HOV has gone down. The amount of the Measure A funding, just for slide purposes here, remains at $140 million. There have been additional $8 million programmed within the STIP since 2010. That's not normal. Typically, it would have been a lot more, but as we all know, the STIP has been broke. No other word to say, it's just been broke. The amount of funding has not been there. And so the balance still needed is $188 million. And for information purposes only, I show future needs, and I just showed the RSTP amount. That's not me making a recommendation. That's not my place to do that. And to help inform the dialogue and discussion, the last column, only change is I added in the cost of the related project, the additional $48 million, and assumed that we would have to find additional future funds from some source to cover that. So that number goes from 161 to 218. This is intended to basically help begin to set the framework for the discussion in the future that you will probably have on updating the strategic plan. So what am I recommending? Well, my recommendation is for 4A is that we proceed and we finalize the design. We complete all the related right-of-way work. Now, the right-of-way work is temporary construction easement, utility relocation. It's not really acquisition. Really move forward with the permitting process and work to fund the construction so we can actually have that segment ready to go construction within fiscal year 2019-2020. And I will explain more to why that year is important. In 4B, the design is less complicated. We don't want to stop. My recommendation is continue to move forward. We have asked Caltrans to not only when they look to change and request additional shop funding for 4A, but to also be greedy and ask for money for 4B. While you're at it, that's how you move forward in particular. And then 4C, which is essentially the Sheffield interchange, is final design right-of-way permitted by the SBCAG and your consultant team. I will want to note that not only was the decision point document effort completed on time, but it came in under budget. And that's true for Caltrans and the consultants in doing that part of it. And 4D and 4E, there is a need, in my opinion, to actually sit down, share information with the county, with the city, walk through information that was generated, and also continue the effort with the coordination with the related projects, San Ysidro, Olive Mill, and Cabrillo Pass. For example, in working through it and looking at the main line, we saw the opportunity that maybe we could do auxiliary lanes between San Ysidro and Olive Mill. Now, there's a trade-off in doing that, and that's a discussion that needs to take place and get inputs from the local agencies and walk through that process. That could be an opportunity for the Cabrera interchange that instead of having a 3-stage construction approach, maybe a 2-stage construction approach that could save time and funding, but that needs to be coordinated with the related projects that are right in the vicinity of it. So the recommendation is that's the next step that we should do in those areas as we move forward with it. And as that becomes more clarity, then actually move forward in locking down timing with that in particular. So the costs associated with the recommendations and potential funding sources that I had on the previous slide. Segment 4A, the cost is $105 million. As you saw earlier on the slide, it said that cost of that segment was $114. We took out the amount that's already been spent, all right? And so this is just additional funding that's needed. The cost to do design right-of-way and permitting for 4B is $21 million and 4C is $9 million. And then 4D is just some initial design coordination, and as we get more clarity on that, then we could work on deciding how to move forward in more detail with the design, permitting, and everything else overall. So why 4A? 4A, I believe, is most ready for construction. Linden-Castile Pass is currently under construction. That project is widening the Carp Creek Bridge so they can accommodate 6-lane projects. One of the things that is already starting to take place is the Caltrans team that has been working on HOV and rehab has already started some dialogue with the team that's monitoring doing the construction of this project to understand what we could do to eliminate rework and eliminate throwaway potentially with this. So time's of the essence with that and being able to move forward with. It's less complex and the cost per mile is less. We already have a coastal plan amendment in place. It gives an opportunity to extend the existing HOV lane just over 3 miles. And once it's completed, half of the HOV lane will have been totally completed once that is in place. The STIP funding. The STIP funding for construction is programmed in fiscal year 1920. That was a significant effort by SBCAG staff and Caltrans to retain that funding when earlier last year the CTC deleted funding out of it. It is essential that we have a project ready to go to construction by that deadline instead of having to go back and have a conversation with the CTC about reprogramming that funding. I would not want to have that conversation in this climate. And again, this segment gives us the ability to leverage the larger amount of SHOP funds. I think right now, currently, we have almost $20 million in SHOP funding program. We need to go after and probably twice that amount. And we have the opportunity to start that discussion with Caltrans headquarters this spring and moving forward instead of waiting until next year overall. So ideals and timelines for segment 4A. One of the elements of the scope of work we had was on alternative delivery approach. Caltrans has an innovative delivery office in Sacramento. It's headed up by a gentleman by the name of Ray Tritt. Caltrans SBCAG, we have been talking with him. We have generated some information. He has looked at the ideals design build, but he also has looked at the ideal construction manager, general contractor. You will see in our 16-page report, I'm not recommending design build for several reasons. The uncertainty from permitting, the uncertainty from timing of some of the funding. I just don't think it's a good delivery method right now. We do believe there is good potential for a construction manager, general contractor approach, What that approach is, you go out, you hire a contractor before you complete the design. That construction manager works side by side with your designer to provide input and innovation on constructability, cost savings, and why this could be really important in segment 4A. We're in the same limits as Linden Castaic. So it would really be good to basically get that input that a designer may not know. I mean, the contractor builds it. So you actually had a contractor at the table with you. Once you complete the design, that contractor gets to basically submit a bid based upon a independent cost estimate that they don't get to see. Then the state can either accept it or they can put it out to bid. And there are 8 projects going on around the state so far. It has been fairly successful. There is legislation that allows an additional projects be done, and Caltrans is going to be going through a call for project process to select which projects. That process will probably start this summer, but we've already started that conversation. Construction programming. We need to get the funding for construction program. The next shop is the 2018 shop, which is adopted in April 2018. But the approach that we were talking about with 4A is to pursue a change in the existing shop so that we can actually get construction program this summer for segment 4A for shop funds, and then move forward with that. In addition, the California Transportation Commission is going through their effort to look at the fund estimate for the STIP. They talked about it in LA yesterday. They're going to be presenting some of the assumptions to the Commission for adoption in August. And then that STIP will be adopted, whether they have money in or not. It really depends about some of these other proposals, what happens, and that will get adopted in April 2018. So it gives us the opportunity to look at all those pieces. We need to move forward immediately with the City of Carpinteria and permitting. It is a big advantage of not having to do a local coastal plan amendment and moving forward. And then final design and right away is part. So the goal is to have it ready to go to construction late 2019, and we think it's like a 3-4 year time frame for construction in particular. So next steps, again, although it wasn't part of the decision point document phase, is the environmental document for the HOV needs to be completed before we can go to construction. So it's critical that that gets completed and move forward with it. And that's something I think everybody's fully aware of and should be watched very closely. If you accept these recommendations and approve actions that I will walk over in a few minutes, there will be cooperative agreements that will need to be done between SBCAG and Caltrans for diverse different activities related to design, right-of-way, and construction. There's amendments that will be needed for consultant contracts. The contracts that are put in place allows for this work to be done and move forward with amendments and process. The programming in the 2016 shop was the existing shop, and then I put the 2018 STIP on there because who knows, that could be an opportunity. The idea behind this with the quarter is your most precious source of funding you have is your measure dollars. Your measure dollars is based upon us having a recommendation here so that you can leverage them to be utilized throughout the entire quarter versus spending them all in one spot. Your measure dollars is what attracts the shop dollars. Your measure dollars is what attract other sources of funds. So I did not want to put forth to you a recommendation that spend all your measure dollars, because then I don't know how you finish. The goal is to finish the whole project overall, along with everything else. And then also the strategic plan update. My understanding is there was an understanding that that update would take place after this work was completed with the new cost information. So you have new cost information, it's shared with you, it's shared with TTAC, and so that would be one of the next effort in moving forward. So my conclusion, progress has been made. There is a next segment that can be ready for construction in fiscal year 2019-20. The recommendations have all been designed to allow work to continue in all segments. Project readiness, I believe, is the key when I first showed up here. I still believe it's the key, and I think it's important not just for the 101 projects, but also for your related project, as has been proven as moving forward with funding, but also with the Rincon Trail project. Being ready was one of the big factors of why I was able to get ATP funding and moving forward. Let's not forget really what's on critical path: environmental clearance, coastal permitting and funding. And there's still a lot of work to be done in moving forward. You will see within the report, I kind of listed some timeframes and stuff, but all those are really dependent upon funding and permitting, and they can change around because those things are not totally known. So these are specific board actions I want me to walk through. All right. So you have in your presentation, these are the specific action that has been requested of the board today. They are designed to allow work to continue in all 5 segments of Phase 4. In Segment 4A, City of Carpinteria, the recommendation is complete design, right-of-way permitting, and the source of funding we propose to use is the existing and any new STIP shop funding, and then fill the balance with the Measure A funding. Hold the Measure A funding out and only use it to fill what else we can't get. So we want to keep that available. Prioritize it to start construction in fiscal year 2019-20. Segment B, Carpinteria to Summerlin, is advanced the design to 100%, complete all the right-of-way work, permitting work. Again, use existing STIP funds, shop funds, and then fill the balance with any measure funds we needed for that level of work in particular, and continue to watch to see what happens with some of these proposals and other funding opportunities for construction. Segment 4C, similar to 4B, is identical, except the only difference here is the proposal is to use Measure A dollars, and moving forward with that at this point in time, because the HOV proposed the replacement interchange. Most of the work in that segment is HOV related, with limited use of shop dollars really available for it. And then in segment 4D and E, as I mentioned here, is I think there is a need to immediately start dialogues and discussion with the city and county, walk through the work that was done by Mark Thomas and working with Caltrans for the one-on-one improvements and scopes to get their input, local agency project development team meetings, and continue the coordination with the city and county on environmental and preliminary engineering and on the mill. So with that concludes my presentation, and I will entertain questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you also for bringing it on time and below budget. That's pretty nice.
Credit goes to the team. I mean, you have a wonderful team working on this at both Caltrans, SBCAG staff, and this consultant community, and local agency staff working with us. And that's a lot of work that went place. I just get the pleasure of being the person to stand here to tell you about it.
Well, thank you and your team nonetheless.
I have a question.
Okay, questions from our board. Mr.
Tony,
Richardson.
I'm getting up there in long-toothed ages, and I'd like to know if you have a prediction, assuming everything goes according to plan, of when the 101 widening might be completed, at least for traffic on the main line.
I can't give you that prediction.
Can you say?
One of the things I hope Director Richardson, you understand with me is I don't overpromise. It will take a long time. All right. And the reality of why it will take a long time is funding is still uncertainty, and there's still work to be done to get through the permitting process. And the recommendations I laid out was to allow progress to continue and to bring relief to the traveling public for as much as you can, as fast as you can along the way.
But you can't even give us a ballpark?
No, because, if I had a ballpark I could give you with that means I know exactly how much transportation money is going to show up and when. And
Sure.
if I did, I'd be on some island in the Caymans somewhere.
Okay. Well, thank you much.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Mr. Chair? Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Clark?
Thank you. I got a couple questions. One has to do on the report on page 9, costs and funding, and mentions ways that the cost was reduced. And the first part of that question on that one is the elimination of proposed retaining walls at the salt marsh. I'm wondering why those were proposed in the first place and why it's okay to not do them now. And the second part of that question would be the reduction in the number and area of temporary easements needed for sound walls. Does that mean that there's going to be less sound walls constructed than were originally proposed? And then my second question has to do on page 14 with the permitting actions required for the corridor projects, specifically on the Rincon multi-use trail, which is supposed to be complete at the time that Linden Casitas project is completed. And I see there's still outstanding permitting actions required by the county, and do we expect, what's our expectation of getting those completed? Thank you.
Let me start, and then I'm going to invite Dave Emerson from Caltrans to help me, and also Fred Loon, so they may have some more detail. Let me start with the first question about the elimination of proposed retaining walls. During the initial environmental process of the HOV, there was some preliminary design work done. One of the constraints on the HOV was widening to the inside and really limited their flexibility. When you combine the rehab with it, it uncuffed some of the constraints on the designers. And so they was able to basically eliminate the retaining walls, which was included in the HOV design to avoid or minimize impacts on these sensitive resources. And they was able to eliminate those impacts or avoid them without the use of retaining walls. So that's the answer to your first question regarding that. Similar answer would apply to the sound walls. We have the same number of sound walls that was originally envisioned as part of the HOV environmental document. By combining the rehab and HOV, the designers have some flexibility in how they're able to do that. And the sound walls was able to be accommodated with less temporary construction easements in regards to that. I think your last question, Director Clark, was on the coastal permitting, and I actually have to defer to Fred on that one.
So Director Clark and board members, we have the answer to that question is that there is still coastal permitting required through the county. The Rincon Multi-Use Trail is a project that crosses both the city of Carpinteria and the county's jurisdiction. We, as SBCAG, are working with the project development team that includes the city and the county, and have developed all the information to date to submit for the coastal permit, and we're using Measure A grant funds that were provided through an application by the city of Carpinteria, and they've approved the use of those funds to process that permit through the county, and so those are, that's going to be initiated within the next month.
Any further questions, Mr. Clark?
No, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any question? Go ahead.
Thank you. First off, Mr. Harris, thank you for the very well-written and detailed report. I also want to let the board know the city's appreciation to Ms. Kern, who's been meeting with us. We had a few meetings, one with myself and key city staff, about the parallel projects and how that relates to the main line. We even actually took a little field trip to see it on the ground, and then I know there's been some follow-up conversations with staff there, so just to get her up to speed on all the different issues. So I really appreciate those conversations, and I think they've moved the conversation forward in a productive manner, so thank you very much. I have a couple questions, one about funding and then about sequencing. So just, I guess, slide 11, maybe if you can put that up. The STIP, the STIP funds, the 28 million. So when we did the strategic plan back in 2010, where did we hope to be by now? You mentioned, Mr. Harris, we should have had more than 8 million between 2010 and 2017. But where was the projected income supposed to be at this point, according to our strategic plan? Do we know that? Anyone?
I
Anyone?
don't.
Bueller? Sorry. Do we not know that? More than 28 million, yeah. I mean, is it 128 million? Is it 60 million? Is it?
No. Yeah. Okay. Director Schneider and board members. So the strategic plan, in its forecast for beginning in 2010, anticipated an average of approximately 10 to 15 million every 2 years as our state or our county share. And so I think the board was informed that collecting STIP monies or reserving those for the 101 project over a period of 10 to 15 years or multiple STIP cycles was kind of the projection. You can see we're well below that.
Right, okay. So looking below that 161 amount, I guess the question is, in terms of the recommendations today, it's the other, meaning hopefully other state funding or even federal funding. Let's just say a year from now we get a $50 million grant from a federal agency. I'm just gonna, why not ask? So how does that then get inputted here in terms of then the STIP or the local, the local share of funds? Does that get shifted to the next phase? Do we use the federal money right away? I mean, because I guess, that also, there are all these different funds coming in and out, and right now we just have the Measure A and local funds, but there's no other outside funding coming in that could. So how does that all work, I guess?
From my perspective, that's a discussion that you should be having when you update the strategic plan.
Okay, so so we should reserve that as part of this.
Exactly.
Which order and which sequencing when we and when, Ms. Kern, when are we scheduled to update that?
We included it in the overall work program for the upcoming fiscal year, so
Okay.
we'll start that in July.
Okay, good. All right. And so then the sequencing. So I guess maybe the best way is to look at slide 7. You mentioned, for a lot of good reasons, 4A to go first, which I completely agree with that. I mean, it's ready to go. It's already under construction. All those good reasons. And then the recommendations have, looking at all the different other B, C, D, and E. I guess my question is, are you looking at those sequentially? Are you looking at those simultaneously? Because as Mayor Richardson was just saying, when can we see some congestion relief? It would seem to me if we went north to south, you're going to get instant traffic congestion relief. But if you go south to north, then you're just compressing the area of the congestion. Right, so take away permitting and all that, but just in terms of actual relief, immediate relief, if we focused on going north to south, the bottlenecks that we're seeing now will get flushed out going south, and then the release of the extra lane going north will help right away. So I guess the question is, I know we're in certain places around, we're certain stages of approvals at each stage, but in terms of the emphasis of moving things forward, is your recommendation saying we should do A first, then B, then C, then D, then E? Or is there something other than that?
My recommendation is saying the first thing to go to construction should be A.
Okay.
And I'm not saying then you do B, C, D, and E.
Okay.
In my recommendation. My recommendation is saying you should not stop work in the rest of the quarter. You should prioritize A for construction for a lot of good reasons. But then we have a clear path to move forward with the next phases of work on B and C. That's very clear. But I believe you can get to a clear path on how to move forward on D and E based upon some additional dialogue and sharing information that was generated during the decision point document phase, and also greater coordination on the coordinated projects. The other big point I do want to continue to emphasize is, although, yes, you should think about traffic release and the greatest benefit you can get to the traveling public, you don't get the overall benefit to the traveling public and traffic release unless you complete the whole project. My concern was, if I started with E, there was little to any shop money that could be leveraged, and there is no state STIP money readily available today. So your only way to do that is to spend your measure dollars. And if you spend your measure dollars there, then you have little capability left to leverage measure dollars for funding in the other segments.
Okay.
So that drove me in developing the recommendation.
Okay. So if I'm understanding your recommendations, it's to strike while the iron's hot on whatever funding mechanism is available at which
Yes.
section.
Yep.
That may change over time depending on what other funding streams come available or whatever permitting may happen. So we're not setting in stone the sequencing, it's just monitoring all phases at the same time, moving forward as we can. And when an opportunity comes, to use that opportunity to move the project forward.
Yeah, and let me state it this way. My recommendation and driving principles is get 4A done. Just get it done, because that will give you some benefit to the traveling public. Project readiness is critical for the 101 and all the quarter-related projects. Stay focused on getting them ready. Move whatever you can do to get them ready as fast as possible. You never know what funding opportunities may show up. I mean, I personally, if you had asked me 2 years ago, do I think all this dialogue would be taking place about transportation funding right now? No. Do we know if something's going to come out of it or not? I don't know. But you need to be ready, all right? Because when something does happen, I'm willing to bet you my professional reputation and what I learned in my career that people are going to want to fund construction projects. They're not going to want to fund design environmental documents. And they're going to want you to go to construction like that.
Great. No, and thanks. And then just to close the loop on that next slide showing the segments and how much each segment costs, you know, we've said multiple times the longer you wait, the more expensive it gets, even though you've done some great efficiencies, and I appreciate that. You know, the thought of trying to get segment D and E finished sooner makes sense. It's the most expensive part of it, and so I just want to keep that in mind of getting that process completed. Not only would it create instant relief once completed, but may also reduce the overall cost over time. So as long as I understand your recommendation, which I think I do, is get 4A done and then just work on all the other segments as much as you can and look out for funding, that seems to make sense. And I would just, I look forward to that conversation about the strategic plan, because that's going to be another big conversation about the STIP funds, the RIP funds, other potential funds, and what happens if we do get outside funding. How does that then relate to our local share of STIP funds, and not just for this project, but for all sorts of needs for our road repair, which is what those funds are for. Thank you.
Questions of staff? Go ahead, Mr. Mosby.
You know, the word assumption is in here a lot. And not to be the stick in the mud, but how about a what if? I mean, I remember as a kid going through the Bay Area with the roads to nowhere, the overpasses to nowhere that sat there. So, I mean, what ends up happening if you have the what if? I mean, maybe that's something you don't want to talk about, but I mean, I think you should always focus on that and make sure that when you're doing something, you at least get to a point of completion that you have something you can use. And to just, I don't know, what, a couple $100 million of assumptions in here, and it seems a little...
Well, the recommendations are not asking you to approve going forward with any work that I believe will be wasted. We're not talking about spending money on projects that the board has not identified as priorities to get accomplished. We are rarely advancing these projects. I honestly do believe they will get done at some point in time. I just can't answer the question as to when in particular. I feel very confident that, you know, design, it lasts for a while, you know, as we move forward in those part of it out there. But I will tell you, it will take a long time to get there unless, as Director Snyder said, money falls, you know, next year, then all this could go faster. Yeah. So I can give you a couple what ifs. One what if is, okay, what if someone walks in and drops $100 million on you next year? Well, you can get a lot of work done, but one of the questions you're going to have to answer is, you don't want all this under construction at the same time. You will have the community paralyzed in trying to work through that. Then another scenario could be, well, okay, no money shows up anytime soon. Well, you have to continue to work on it. That just means it's going to take longer to be completed.
And the other question is, with SHOP funding, because SHOP isn't an unlimited pool, so if are we going to be focusing all of our energy there? How does that affect the rest of the county for SHOP funding? Is that basically we're going to take everything potentially that we'd be going, we're just not going to apply for other SHOP projects in the rest of the county because we'd want them competing against each other, so.
That's not the case. You have a item, and Tim can speak to this, that I think I saw over there on the table, where they have listed all the SHOP projects they are asking for within the county. This is just one of them in particular, but I will defer to Tim.
Thank you. And yes, I mean, with the list, there are quite a few shop projects. I know, you know, in your area, we've talked about what we can make ready and, you know, find shop eligibility, similar to what we did on this corridor. You're right, shop is not unlimited. I'm hopeful that in the coming months we'll hear more good news on transportation in general, and it'll affect local streets and roads and shops' ability to catch up with their backlog. But yeah, we will continue to press on a lot of projects. And at this time, it is still statewide competition, so it is not if we look at this part of the county, we can't do anything else.
So it's not going to affect, we're going to continue to embrace all
Right.
of them.
And in all of the proposals for additional funding that I've seen that will help, the shop and the state highways as well as local streets and roads, there's an emphasis on the fixing what we have before we expand it, which is why one of the big assets they're looking at then is pavement and bridge. And this rehab program is all about taking care of the pavement and bridges that are out there. And that's why I feel pretty confident that, this will remain a priority in any shop scenario.
Thanks. Well, hopefully we won't be waiting decades like they did up in San Jose on that project. That was
I agree with you. I hope that will not be the case as well.
would you talk to the Tooth Fairy? Maybe they could pay a few extra bucks.
Well, speaking of tooth fairies, I have hope too, but I'm afraid that what it seems like the federal government's plan at this point is that some other private entity is going to come up with $50 million and give it to us if we embrace a toll lane or something else, and that's not really a plan, and that's not really $50 million. So I think that we also have to look at the possibility that, April for the state is at best 50-50, probably maybe slightly less than 50-50, whether things are going to get better by the end of April in the state funding, and the federal government funding, as reported, is at least deferred till next year, if not being, in my view, reminiscent of the Tooth Fairy. But I wanted to underscore, maybe if you would be willing to put up that map slide again, why people in the South, in my neck of the woods, and Mayor Schneider's neck of the woods keep on talking about the staging question. And that's because there's jobs here, and there's jobs here, and there's no jobs here, right? So we open this corridor up. There's really nowhere they're going here. I mean, between here and here, there's only 3 major employers. And here there's a ton more, and here there's a ton more. And so the northbound traffic is trying to get to jobs, the southbound traffic is trying to get to residences. The logic, I think, of starting here is that congestion relief, happens because people are trying to get to residences, and so I get if we don't really have a choice because it's the only place we're going to get STIP funding, why we'd be going for A, but it's still, I think if we're doing another sequencing from and not doing E and D first, I'd like to understand the numbers and how the intuitive, fact that there's no jobs there somehow is not, that the intuitive idea is wrong. And I haven't seen numbers that show me that the intuitive idea is wrong. And so I guess I'm trying to understand once we complete A, why we wouldn't prioritize D and E. What part of this am I not seeing?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I think what Tony has indicated is that we haven't decided that at this point in time, and what's key to this is being ready to go and being able to be nimble enough to take advantage of funding opportunities when they're available. So our goal is to get every project here, the main line as well as the auxiliary projects or parallel projects or whatever you want to call them, keep it moving, get them ready to go, so when funding comes available, we can make them happen. So that could still possibly happen, and it's a decision of this board. But being ready to go and having the funding available is what's driving this decision, and that's why A makes the most sense today, and where we go from would D, E, saying the alphabet backwards is difficult. EDCB is a decision of this board that we'll address in the strategic plan as we move forward.
And I guess you're also saying that if we want to do that, if we want to do the north-south, then maybe we should permit them.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Getting.
That's fair enough.
Getting rid of the hurdles to implementing these projects is key. Or overcoming the hurdles is probably a better word.
And also, I would add, not just permitted, getting environmental done, permitting, and making sure you have a clear understanding of how you really want to leverage your measure dollars. And, on the assumption that you're going to get the whole thing done. So that's why I tried to frame it this way for you. So you have some tough decisions.
Any further questions of staff? I do have a speaker slip. Okay, let's move on to Mr. Becker.
Thank you. Tom Becker, representing Carson Basic. To answer Mr. Richardson's question about when this is going to be completed, the Montecito Journal had an excellent story. I think it's in last week's edition. The completion date is at the earliest is going to be 2030, Mr. Richardson. The earliest date this project is going to be completed is year 2030. Construction time will be 12 years of construction time for this project. It's pointed out that the Apollo moon project took 7 years to put a man on the moon and cost less than widening the freeway. They've tried to widening this freeway for 70 years, 10 times longer than it took to put a man on the moon. Very good article in Montecito Journal. You should read it. Number two, the letter that was sent to the president about the infrastructure plan. You have to remember, these letters are one-sided opinions. The president, that letter does not include the opinions of people like Carson Basic and others. This is the reason why we're requesting the itinerary from you. We want to know what you're telling the feds. We want to know what you're discussing. We want to see your documentation. And then when this comes before the president and his administration, we can provide our information and discuss your information. As far as the EIR for this project, there are serious questions being raised about this EIR. For instance, directing Mr. Williams' answer or question about employee, employer, and housing, Carson Basic is requesting a study of how many government employees live in Ventura and commute into South County, and what would happen if those government employees were required to use mass transit. In our opinion, if every government employee was required to use a bus and not to drive during peak hours, you wouldn't have to widen that freeway. And then the other thing is oil royalties. You people have, in the state of California, has absolutely destroyed industries that you don't like, including the oil industry. There's billions and billions and billions of dollars of oil in state and federal waters that you people are fighting against. And remember, the Trump administration, they are oil people. Are you kidding me? Rex Tillerson as Secretary of State, Rick Perry as EPA, no, not EPA, but energy. It's the Trump administration wants oil, and you have billions of dollars in royalty that if you went for that oil, you'd have enough money to do everything you wanted in this county and have money left over. And finally, the commingling of shop funds with construction funds, boy, is that questionable, and we're looking into that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Becker. I also have another speaker slip from in Santa Barbara. Oh, excuse me, from here. Mr. Eberling.
Good morning, everybody. Can you put up my slide, please?
Would you stop the clock until he can get set up? Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. What I first want to do is introduce myself. My name is Charles Ebling. I'm a civil engineer and traffic engineer with the City of Carpinteria. I serve as the city's Public Works Director. city engineer and city traffic engineer. I have over 20 years of experience in transportation engineering, and I also serve on the TTAC board and represent the city of Carpinteria. Before I get into my slides, I only have a couple. I want to address Director Williams' question or comment about permitting. I think the city of Carpinteria has gone above and beyond the call of duty in producing the LCPA for the Linden-Casitas Interchanges project and the subsequent coastal development permitting that went with that. We encourage and would like to facilitate any work we can do with the county to get the county going on their LCPA and the coastal development permitting that goes with that. I think that the Coastal Commission expects that the Santa Claus Lane Bike Path project be completed with the HOV project. I don't see how you're going to do half of the HOV project in Carpinteria. In other words, 4A ends at Carpinteria's city boundary without completing the Santa Claus Lane Bike Path project and therefore likely completing 4B. I think the Coastal Commission is going to expect that 4B be done at the same time. So there's a lot of good reasons to pursue not only 4A but also 4B. But you know, I wrote my presentation, these brief slides, in response to a comment I received or talked with Rob Dayton with the city of Santa Barbara, and it really inspired me to produce these slides. So can you move to slide 2, please? What I did is I took some pictures this morning as I prepared this presentation of the congestion in Carpinteria. And the comment from Rob Dayton at the city of Santa Barbara was that there's congestion in the city of Santa Barbara, and yet why would we widen the freeway in the city of Carpinteria only to produce more storage? And I thought that was a really unfair characterization between the congestion in the city of Santa Barbara and the value or the impact of congestion in the city of Carpinteria. So on a day-to-day basis, including this morning, you'll see from the 3 pictures that we have stop-and-go traffic on the northbound lanes in the city of Carpinteria. We have direct offloading in the second photo, second one down, on Carpinteria Avenue. And yet even some of our other roads like Via Real near Santa Monica are congested because of that offloading. So we highly encourage that 4A be completed. One of the reasons why we want 4A to be completed is that the overall phase 2 of the widening from Muscle Shoals to Carpinteria ended right in the middle of Carpinteria. It created a massive bottleneck, and we're getting now this type of congestion every day. And I would say that this type of congestion is not any less or more important than the congestion in Santa Barbara. And I was discouraged by Mr. Dayton's comments characterizing city of Carpinteria's congestion less important than Santa Barbara's. One of the things about Santa Barbara, being a resident of Santa Barbara, is that I'm fully aware of the idea that there are alternative routes in the city. If you're not happy with the freeway, you can actually go on State Street, go on Foothill. You can get around the town and not have to use the freeway. In Carpinteria, that's just simply not the case. You have the freeway and 1 or 2 frontage roads, and when the freeway get congested, Carpinteria is suddenly gridlocked. And then, of course, collisions, weekend and holiday traffic, all those types of events regularly exacerbate this condition in Carpinteria, and I think that speaks for itself. Can you move to the next slide, please? So Carpinteria is the closest delivering 4A. We're also the closest to delivering 4B, with the caveat that we in Carpinteria are doing everything we can, including facilitating and sending our consultants and our staff to the county of Santa Barbara to get them going with completing the LCPA for the county. We're putting a lot of work into helping the county as much as we can. We've offered our assistance because we want 4A and 4B to go forward. I also want to cover the idea that the city of Carpinteria has an excellent working relationship with SBCAG and Caltrans. In fact, Caltrans' design staff that's doing the half of the HOV project in the Carpinteria area is excellent. We have an excellent working relationship with them. And furthermore, the construction staff is fabulous, and we are proceeding really well with the Linden-Casitas Interchanges project, and we work with them every day and they're just a great team to work with. So I think the city of Carpinteria and SBCAG and Caltrans have developed an amazing team for delivering these projects, and we want to keep that going. waiting for other agencies to catch up, City of Santa Barbara to catch up with some of their issues. It risks things like risking the IIP funding. It's only $2 million, but $2 million is $2 million. I wouldn't want to be in your position to say that we tossed away $2 million. So I think it's really important that we collaborate with all the agencies. I was really taken aback with the comments that I heard at the TTAC meeting, although in the end I was gratified that we had a 100% recommendation from TTAC for these recommendations for you today. So I have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them on behalf of the staff of the City of Carpinteria.
Thank you
Mr.
very
Chair?
much.
Mr. Chair, I
Yes.
think Mr. Dayton's in Santa Barbara, if he could respond to that.
I have a speaker slip
Thank you.
for him, so.
Great.
All right.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments, I appreciate that. Mr. Williams?
Yeah, I just want to say that I probably have, I sit in this twice a day, every day, and you know, I probably have more reason than most people, or about equal to other Carpinteria residents for, you know, the potential to be offended by the comments, you know, especially since my wife almost gave birth in the car because it took an hour to get from Carpinteria to Cottage Hospital at 10 in the morning on a Friday. But I don't think we should be offended. I think we've just got to talk about what makes sense. And I think, you know, I think the point of Mr. Dayton has been that this will help us for, you know, a few minutes, and then we're going to get stuck in it in Summerlin, and then the people of Summerlin are going to be in the same situation that the people that my neighborhood is in now once we're in completion. And I think the
But is that a fair characterization for the citizens of the city?
Gentlemen, I don't want to debate.
Yeah, my point is, I think debate is good, but we're trying to figure out what makes sense with limited dollars, and I think we have to struggle with that. I think your characterization is very reflective of how people in Carpinteria feel. I walked most of the city, and they want it done now. But I think we got to.
Mr. Williams, can you wrap up, please?
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, I also have another speaker slip, and this is the last one. We're not going to continue to add speaker slips to this. Mr. Dayton?
Yes, board members, thank you. I just wanted to, I appreciate Mr. Williams' comments as well, and I apologize to Mr. Ebeling if he felt offended by my comments. And at TTAC, we did unanimously vote for the proposal that's before you, and Section A is critical in Carpinteria to get done ahead of time. And my points were meant to be collaborative, and that is that we're all in this together. And the point of this project is ultimately to benefit the commuters as soon as possible. And my question to Tony Harris at the time was just to ask him about the level of service gains. In other words, the freeway gains that could be had by moving from north to south. When we did the operational improvements, it was very clear that project, even though it was only a few miles, significantly benefited all of us, not just Santa Barbara, but people who are commuting in and out of from the South Coast. So I think definitely moving forward Section A, which is before you now, but then also having some sort of a level of service analysis that would show us how much faster would people move from north to south in the morning and the afternoon with every mile that we go north to south versus south to north, I think would be instructive. We only have limited amounts of money to spend on this. Hopefully we get all the funds, but if we don't, the public not seeing an immediate benefit or as soon as possible is critical for this project. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Let's bring it back to the board. We have recommendations that have been made by staff to go forward.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I'm ready to make a motion.
Go
unless
ahead.
there's more comments. I'm very pleased to have the presentation by Mr. Harris and our staff. So I'm going to make the recommendations, to make a motion that we approve recommendations as noted in our staff report, to continue to work on all 5 segments of Highway Phase 4 as outlined in our staff report.
Is there a second? Second been made. Any further discussion by the board? Hearing and seeing none, roll call, please.
Directors Williams? Wolf?
Aye.
Hartman? Adam? Lavanino? Richardson? Lizaldi? Mosby? Clark?
Aye.
Schneider? Patino? Sierra?
Aye.
And Chair Bennett.
Aye.
Motion passed 13-0.
Thank you. Next item, Madam Clerk.
Item 8, Executive Director's Report.
Mr. Chairman, member of the board, thank you for that. I think it's great to see a unanimous vote on that very important item in moving forward, so thank you for that. I have a couple of items. I just want to thank Chairman Bennett and Director Sierra for joining the Central Coast Coalition in Sacramento for our 7th annual State Legislative Day. We had a very productive day with our consultant, Gus Corey. He set up very important meetings for us to lobby and advocate on the Central Coast behalf. And obviously, Highway 101 was a top priority for us, not only in Santa Barbara, but for the other counties as well. And we also have some follow-up that I followed up with you via email about supporting of SB1 and providing those letters of support. And hopefully by April 6th, we'll see some movement on that and get some additional support at the state level for our high priority transportation projects statewide. So again, thank you. I think it was a very productive day and taking that time out of your busy schedule. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up, and in Carpinteria on April 1st, we'll have Carpinteria will host its first open streets event from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. You have a flyer on your in front of you, and if you speak Spanish, you can read it. I think on the other side it's in English. On that day, more than 80 free activities will happen. It will be a bicycle safety rodeo, including a bicycle safety rodeo, Zumba, yoga, spinning, boot camps, martial arts, dance, skating, skate surfing, not surfing on the streets, skate surfing, climbing, live music, and performances. The effort is a collaborative effort by the Santa Barbara County Bicycle Coalition, Santa Barbara Traffic Solution, SBCAG's Traffic Solutions, the Global Good Impact, and support of the Carpinteria Valley Chamber and the City of Carpinteria, the Boys and Girls Club, and numerous other organizations. So I think this shows what we can do when we all work together. So please plan on attending that, and I'll be in DC at that week, so I will unfortunately miss it, but I'm looking forward to hearing all the great things that happen on that day. So have fun.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, next item.
Mr. Bennett, just a quick comment.
Surely.
I just wanted to thank CAG for allowing me to go up to Sacramento. It was quite an experience. What I found, we were there with the Central Coast Coalition, and I talked to one of the reps from San Benito County who said he had 8 projects in his county that had to be done, but none of them were project ready. And I just truly appreciate this board, CAG, Caltrans, Tony Harris and his staff. We have projects that are ready to go, and what a huge difference that makes. And I was so impressed up there. I wanted to thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 9, Caltrans District Director's Report.
Okay, thank you, Chair and Commission. In Caltrans, we do have some projects out, including a 17-mile pavement rehab on 154 and some other ones. You have my report. You also have a letter from me addressing questions that were raised last month. But I will be honest, most of our attention for the last couple months and in the few months ahead, are dealing with the winter storm damage. Statewide, we've had staff working all over the state for, working 24/7 just to try and keep up with things. There's over 730 million in damage from the January-February storms, over 300 sites. And out of the 730, we're already working on projects for 622 million from those, and some others will be follow-up projects. In Santa Barbara,
Can I ask you a question?
yes, you can.
How much of that was related to failure to maintain all that stuff?
That is,
that's all deferred maintenance that absolutely failed at that point,
there is
right?
quite a bit of deferred maintenance. I can't say that it is all, since Monterey County is also in my district. Regardless of how well we had maintained some of that pavement, the road and the embankments are gone, or we have 300,000 yards of material fall onto the roadway. So there is.
You just push it into the ocean, no big deal.
There is a national marine sanctuary there, which makes it harder for us to do those type of activities. Yes, but so in this county, in Santa Barbara County, on 101 and 154, we do have rock net and barrier systems to keep that type of material coming onto the roadway, and those were overwhelmed. So we've had to clean up those materials, clean up the slopes, and we'll be reinstalling the rock nets and barriers, various locations up 101, 154. In Buellton, we had some concrete slab failures. So we need to go back and replace some of those. And then going to what Director Adam just brought up, on State Route 1 over the Santa Maria River Bridge, we have some bridge deck that we need to go in and take care of that. That's not typical storm damage kind of repair, but because of the deferred maintenance there, we have potholes coming up and things that we have to do on an emergency basis that otherwise would have been taken care of. As I mentioned, and I know the reason I'm bringing it up is it's kind of a statewide issue affecting economy and everything on the state. The Monterey Highway 1 remains closed at this point. At one point, we had about 70 miles of residents landlocked from the north and south, and the county roads and Forest Service roads coming in were not open either. We've had to work with Office of Emergency Services at the county and state level to actually helicopter in emergency supplies, and we've been able to open the road for emergency resupply from the south, get propane trucks and stuff. When they cut off electricity, they were going through propane just to run generators. So there's a lot of work happening up there. If anyone would like, I can go on for a long time on that. But knowing it's not your county, I'll hold off. But we have been very busy throughout all our 5 counties in doing storm damage. The northern counties of Santa Cruz and Monterey got hit a little harder than here in San Luis and Santa Barbara. But we're working on all those, and those were the major things that were taking up our time. I wanted to share my thanks for this board and all of the public in helping understand as we get these rains. We're out there. We try and keep the information up on our website. Again, I've talked about Quick Maps that Caltrans has as both a website and an app that you can use on your phone. We get information out just as soon as we can, but these type of things change a lot quicker than our planned construction and other maintenance activities. So with that, I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Okay, thank you. I do have a speaker slip that...
You can do that first if you wish.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Becker.
Thank you. Cars are basic again. This is concerning the Caltrans Director's Report, and it does concern the HOV project, so I want to discuss that again. You should be aware that as part of the EIR for this project, serious questions has been raised, and people are now asking questions, are there alternatives? Now, Cars Are Basic submitted a letter to Caltrans as part of the EIR draft process, and we asked Caltrans to conduct a study. What would happen if all government employees were required to use mass transit during the peak rush hours, Monday through Friday? What would happen to the level of service on Highway 101, if the government employees were required to take buses instead of driving their cars? Cars for Basic has observed on the holidays like President's Day, where most people work but the government people have off, we've observed that freeway moves at 60 miles an hour. And then the next day, when the government employees are back to work, it comes to a grinding halt. We observed that more than once. It seems like there's probably a possibility that if you were to require, as a condition of their employment, government employees, state, county, and city employees were required to use mass transit or some form of transportation other than an automobile during peak hours, you wouldn't have to widen that freeway for the purpose of congestion relief. Now, I'm going to be very fair with Rob Dayton. I just asked him if I could say something. He came up to me just 5 minutes ago, shook my hand, and said, hey, that's a good idea about government employees using mass transit. Now, I'm going to be very fair because he and I just had a discussion out in the hallway about it. But even the city of Santa Barbara thinks that it's a good idea that their employees should be using mass transit during peak rush hour to alleviate congestion. But we don't, Cars for Basic doesn't see that really happening. You got the Clean Air Express, which has like 3 buses, doesn't do any good. You're talking about probably 10,000, 5,000 government employees who live south of that area and commute in the morning. One more thing, Mr. Williams, congratulations on your child. I regret it, but boy, during the construction, when they're building this thing over the next 12 years, you better hope that your wife is not going to have another baby, because during the construction, that freeway is going to stop, and it's going to be that way for 12 years. You might want to consider home birth for your next child if it's going to be during construction. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Becker. Okay, Mr. Lizardi. I don't think you have your button pushed, Mr. Lizardi. Thank you.
There you go. Thank you, and thank, I guess, North County, when it involves you and so on, and jumping on that. And is there still ongoing discussions as far as replacing that eventually? That's what I heard.
Yes, those are ongoing.
Okay, thank you.
I was just going to suggest that if Mr. Williams is not a CalStar member, he should join, and then when you're on the freeway and you're having the baby, you can call CalStar and they'll come and pick you up, take you to the hospital at no cost. So for $45 a year, it's cheap.
Thank you. Don't see any. Let's move on to our committee meetings. The CalVans board meeting, Mr. Director Richardson.
It's amazing Mr. Becker's suggestion of government employees using public transportation. However, CalVans is an alternative. And CalVans is a very efficient way of transporting people. Our meeting the other day highlighted the surplusing of about 40 vans. An interesting fact about that is that about a third of those vans were used for non-agricultural purposes. Their mileage was in the 250,000 miles to 300,000 miles of use. The vans that were used for agricultural purposes were in 150,000 miles use, and the reason that they're surplusing those is that agriculture workers bring tools and heavy equipment and things to inside the van, and it shows wear and tear, so they're auctioning those off early. An interesting thing that CalVans does too is encourage the Fed 5307 fund generation. In the CalVans has been able to show that there's been almost $9 million in federal funds granted to these van pools, and the more miles that are used, the more money is generated I would suggest that Santa Barbara County and go along with increasing that. Oh, let me get. increasing van pool usage. The air quality improvement program funding projections was commented on, and also if those county or city or other agencies would like a presentation by Calvans, they're very willing to outreach and schedule those presentations. So it's and I encourage that. And we also elected a new chair and vice chair, and that's the end of my report.
Thank you very much. Director Snyder.
Thank you. The Pacific Surfliner board meeting happened at the same time as our South Coast Subregional, so I only was able to call in for the first part of it, but the most important piece is we're having LoSan figure out some funding opportunities to do some lobbying up in Sacramento for interpassenger rail opportunities should some kind of legislation go through, so our corridor is not left out in those kind of funding decisions. There's also a meeting on Monday that's going to follow up with the business plan. So things keep moving forward in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a nice, positive piece of information. Any other comments to be made? If not, it's time to adjourn. So done.